to a new video. I am McAfro, aka Connor, as some of you may know me, and today I'm going to be ranking the Radiohead albums from worst to best for the channel. They're a huge band. I'm sure you've heard of them at some point in your life.
Hi, I'm one of Connor's friends, Jacob, and I make videos with Connor sometimes. He worked on my short film Neutrals, but the big thing is I'm a Radiohead fan as well. Back in high school, Connor and I first got to talking, and one of the first things we talked about was actually Radiohead and how we both had a mutual appreciation and love for the music. Hail to the Thief, and I love it because I love that it's politically charged. I think it's good that they made an album that's politically charged. I think this is probably one of the most underrated albums in their canon. One of my favorites, even though, look, they got a lot of good stuff, okay? Even if I don't necessarily agree with the politics, I was a little baby when George Bush was president. Give me a fucking break. I don't know exactly what was happening, so I can't totally vibe with the politics, but I think it's good that they made just something that had a political message behind that. And then at the same time, like, get over it. Like, first off, Bush hasn't been president for like 20 fucking years. And then secondly, it's not like these songs are titled like, I hate Republican doo-doo heads. Like, it's, think about it for a second.
I'm gonna get a lot of hate for putting this album so low, but I'm sorry, it's really not for me. And it has nothing to do with all of the political, anti-right undertones that this album's filled with, or that it's the fact that it's the longest Radiohead album with the 14-song track list. Really, I'm just not a big fan of this album's sound. It just sort of seems like a Radiohead album that didn't really pay off, didn't really get to the bigger picture. Radiohead, to me, is a band that's always known for creating fucking awesome melodies and just great instrumentals. And really, there's only 2 songs on this album that I can really get into, and that's A Punch Up at a Wedding and Wolf at the Door. One, because Thom's lower notes in that song is just awesome, and it's got this crispy spoken word aspect to it that I just love.
The flat in the face, the flat in the face, the flat in the face, the flat in the face.
Oh, maybe it's gonna move up a spot after I listen to it once more, but I really do like this one. I think it's got a couple duds though. The Gloaming fucking sucks.
The King of Limbs. Man, what a crazy album. To me, this album's sound and overall tone kind of got lost in translation somewhere between In Rainbows and a Moon-Shaped Pool, which personally I don't think is a bad thing. To me, I think Radiohead went a little off the wall. Kind of sounded like they were a few sheets to the wind in the making of some of these songs. The album kicks off with the track Bloom, and instantly we get this kind of weird, out of tune, out of tempo synth that really just kind of drives in the reason I'm not crazy about this album. It's just that some of the shit they're doing with the music doesn't make sense and really doesn't work for the human ear. And I know it might sound like I'm talking a lot of shit about this album. Some people are probably gonna be really offended because I know this album definitely has a dedicated fan base, as with Hail to the Thief. But I will say this, I absolutely adore the second half of this album. Give Up the Ghost, a heartbreaking song, but also with a bit of an uplifting spiritual feel to it. Sounds honestly like it was ripped straight out of Native American folklore music. And then this album ends with the banger that is Separator, which honestly is probably one of my favorite Radiohead tracks ever. Thom's vocals towards the end of the song, honestly, are some of the best I've ever heard. It's just really a song that can bring you to tears if you let it. To me, this album is just not fully realized. And I hate to say it, it's honestly a bummer because I do think if Radiohead sort of grasped what they were trying to get in this album that they got so close to, this could easily be one of their best and weirdest albums ever. But to me, it's unfortunately more on the mediocre sides of things, even with amazing tracks like Lotus Flower, Codex, Give Up the Ghost, and Separator. Pablo Honey. Man, this is gonna piss some people off. What can I say about Pablo Honey? First off, what the fuck? This album easily has the weirdest name of all Radiohead albums, and not in the sense that it's just a weird phrase. It's just I have no idea where it comes from or how it connects to the lyrics and tone of the album at all. Most Radiohead albums I can derive some, overall source of meaning or symbolism with the name of the album and the tracks that consist of it. But yeah, not this one. This album's gonna be a lot higher on this list than you'll find other people's rankings. And that's honestly because I find a lot of charm in this album. Early Radiohead is very interesting to me because As you know, in the later years of the band's discography, their music gets very abstract, very complex. But towards the first two albums, they really weren't taking themselves that seriously. Pablo Honey to me is just, pretty good grunge album from the time, but unlike a lot of other grunge, it also can get really moody and soft. This is a good album to play on like a warm, hot summer day with tracks like Creep, Vegetable, which is awesome, the track Blowout, Stop Whispering. Just a great album to, chill out to. The reason it's not higher on this list is because this album really doesn't offer the emotional depth and complexity that Radiohead would begin to be known for with later albums, such as Amnesiac. Yeah, mixed feelings. I would say mixed feelings is the perfect word to describe how I feel about this album. So if you don't know the story, Amnesiac was composed and recorded roughly the same time as Kid A. And instead of releasing these songs as just Kid A B-sides or extra tracks, Radiohead decided to create a whole different album. The two albums, Kid A and Amnesiac, are kind of like two sides of the same coin, which I don't think is a move I disagree with. I definitely think Amnesiac and Kid A are albums that exist in two definitely different places, and they each bring something unique to the table. It's definitely one of Radiohead's darkest and creepiest albums. Tracks like Pyramid Song with those haunting piano chords really help build atmosphere. Packed Like Sardines and Knives Out are, pretty fun, catchy Radiohead tracks. This album also has a couple songs that are just way too experimental and off the deep end for me, such as Polk Pole Revolving Doors. That song, I'm sorry, has never struck a chord with me. We also get a song called Hunting Bears, which is a cool little guitar instrumental, but it never really elevates into something more than that. And if you ask me, the song's a bit quiet. To end on a positive note, the track You and Whose Army is a perfect song for me. I absolutely love the build-up when the piano kicks in. It's impossible not to get lost in the beauty of the song. Honestly, that one song is probably the reason this album is number 6 on the list and not number 9. So yeah, the way I see it, Amnesiac is sort of, Kid A's slightly less hot cousin. But maybe if you're drunk enough, a moon-shaped pool. Fun fact, did you know that when you're crying, the tears that form around your eyelid sort of looks like a moon-shaped pool? A Moon-Shaped Pool is Radiohead's most recent album, and I love this thing. I really adore it, I must say. I don't think it's necessarily a Radiohead masterpiece track to track like a lot of their albums are. I think this album is a bit too sad, somber, and quiet to reach the soaring heights other Radiohead albums have, which is not to discredit it because this is still a damn good album. Favorite tracks on this album include Burn the Witch, which just has these awesome synths and beautiful string arrangements. I love that the band waited till they had a full-scale orchestra to produce this song, even though it had been on the back burner for about 15 years. Absolutely love it. Desert Island Disc, this just beautiful acoustic tune that sounds like it was produced by an angel. And of course, how could I forget, True Love Waits. A song which was first shown off in 1995 but never got a studio release until 2016. The song was literally old enough to drink before it saw the light of day. Another sort of beautiful and poetic thing about this album, which I definitely think has to do with the album's, sort of sad and somber mood, is that it was released and recorded around the time Thom Yorke was getting a divorce from his wife Rachel Owen, who would then only a few months later go on to die from cancer, which makes the overall energy and tone of this album just so much more palpable, as you can see Thom and all the band members, sort of just picking out every little morsel of depressing and melancholy energy to fill this album with. Radiohead did a great job at evolving their sound with this album and taking new risks, even if I do think it was a bit quiet in the long run. And if you do feel sad for Thom Yorke, just know he's dating a hot Italian actress now, so he's doing all right. The Bends. Man, what a classic album. Radiohead really did something interesting with the Bends. They kind of took this, genre that had been brewing for a few years, Britpop, and they released this album and they totally owned it, because I definitely think this is one of the best records of that genre ever. And I gotta say, this album has some of Radiohead's best guitar work, acoustic and electric ever. It's really one of those albums that's underrated and overrated at the same time. It's impossible not to fall in love with catchy tracks like High and Dry or Fake Plastic Trees. The band just has an awesome acoustic sound on this album that can be very raw and poignant at times, and they really just create these awesome and ethereal soundscapes, which Thom's vocals just soar over like a hot knife on butter. It's also easily the most accessible Radiohead album, and definitely their poppiest. If you're new to the band and want to get into them, I don't think there's a better place to start than this album. My favorite track is probably Bulletproof, I Wish I Was. Just the way it builds up, the guitar work, the way all the instruments just pop to life with Thom's vocals in the chorus has me convinced heaven is real. This album is also easily Radiohead's most sampled when it comes to film and television. You can catch tracks in Clueless and 50/50. Also, a moment to appreciate. The Benz has some of my favorite Radiohead cover art. Is he happy? Is he in pain? Is he busting a nut? The world may never know.
In Rainbows. Just from the cover art, the design of the text on the front, you're immediately grabbed, and the album does not let you go. It is a very concise album, probably their most concise album. It is neatly made up of 10 tracks, and it has just such a wonderful flow from beginning to end. I've listened to this album countless times at this point. Some of the highlights include Videotape, which is the heart-wrenching final track, Nude, which is a powerhouse track. Reckoner is also an underrated track off of this one. I think it normally gets kind of swept under the rug. One of the songs off of this album that I would consider probably my favorite is Jigsaw Falling Into Place. That one is such a ride, and by the end of it, you feel like you need to take a fucking nap because of how intense it was for the past 6 minutes or whatever. And I just think this is a great album that mixes a lot of their more quieter, sensitive sensibilities along with a lot of their early rock elements mixed in with a lot of the acoustic stuff they were trying around that time, as well as not losing sight of pushing the boundaries as far as techno, electronica, and just genre mashing goes for an album. I think that In Rainbows is the pinnacle of what a Radiohead album is, and at least what they can be up until LP 10 comes out sometime. The one album before my favorite Radiohead album has to be Kid A. Now, full disclosure, this was the first album of theirs that I listened to beginning to end. Before then, I had picked up on a couple of songs, but this was the first one where it was really like, boom. It was a big punch in the face. I bought this CD right here at an FIE with my girl at the time. No longer together. Ladies, we're still out there. I'm out there. But yeah, I bought this back in like 2016, 2017, some crazy year, 20 years ago, and I immediately fell in love with it. It was just the mix of the techno sounds, the melancholy nature of the whole piece, but it would get riveting and it would get your heart pumping almost at the point where it was about to leap out of your chest. And the big song for me that really made me fall in love with this album was Optimistic. It was just, I don't know, just something about it. I think it had something to do with a bit of the headspace I was in at the time, and I'm not normally one to get all heady like that, but it was something that really, I don't want to say it helped me through a dark time, because it's not like that happened. There was no dark time to help me through, but it was just a very eye-opening track in the sense where that was what really made me start to listen and appreciate music beyond just kind of what was fed to me. And I definitely have to give this album a lot of credit for opening my eyes to just a lot of things in general.
I might be wrong. Radiohead's live album. What can I say? Radiohead is one thing in the studio, but when you hear them live, it's just, okay, yeah, I'm just fucking around. Number one is obviously OK Computer. Putting this album at the number one spot is, pretty cliche, predictable. You can see it coming from a mile away. It's sort of like putting Ocarina of Time number one on a list of top 10 Zelda games. OK Computer can get a lot of shit because a lot of people think it's overrated. A lot of people don't think it's, one of the best albums released in the 20th century. But Honestly, I beg to differ. Released in 1997, when kids were watching Nickelodeon and Rugrats, and adults were losing their shit over the Titanic, this album really got everyone to just tune in, shut up, and listen. At the time of this album's release, the sound was unlike anything rock music or music in general had ever heard. Before this album, rock music was at a screeching halt creatively. Radiohead dropped this thing and just paved the way for a new generation of musicians, from Coldplay, Muse, Travis, hell, even John Mayer. They all own a part of their success to how influential and groundbreaking this album was at the time. For a little bit, in the late 90s, Radiohead sort of reached this high where they kind of became more than just a group of guys, more than just a band. They really summed up the time period and, in a way, predicted the future with the rise of technology. The tones of this album show anxiety for an upcoming disconnect, the emergence of technology and its inevitable takeover of humanity. And the best part is, none of it fucking matters. You don't have to spend a lick of time worrying about all that futuristic bullshit, because beneath the lyrics is a beautiful album note for note. I really can't tell you enough how much I love this album, because genuinely the album means something to me more than I can describe in words, which I know is the campiest and most pretentious thing a Radiohead fan could say, but it's the truth.